happens to the house when you go through a divorce in California? I'm Heather McCarthy, your concierge agent and realtor with Better Homes and Gardens Reliance Partners here in Roseville, California, and I am an RCSD trained realtor with a specialization in divorce. So here are the 5 things to consider in a divorce when you own real estate in California. Number 1, big picture finances. Realistically, there's going to be more than just 2 rent or mortgage situations. You're going to have 2 sets of utility bills. So that includes electric, water, cable, if you still have cable, internet service. All of those things are now going to be separate, and it adds to the overall expense of life. Even your grocery bill is likely to be higher. So make sure that if you have the opportunity to really break down your overall expenses, that you look at that over the course of ideally a few months before you part ways, so that way your new living situation is realistic and sustainable. Number 2, is it feasible to keep the house? If so, who can qualify for a new mortgage? Now, there are a few situations where sometimes a mortgage can be assumable, but they're fewer and farther between, and I would refer you to a mortgage professional that is well versed in the nuances of a divorce real estate transfer. So ultimately, in the real estate environment we're finding ourselves with increasing interest rates and things of that nature, it is more difficult to qualify for a mortgage, not only by yourself with your individual income, but also because the interest rates are likely higher than the current mortgage interest rate that you have. So it's really important to have all of that information available to you and to factor that into your decision making. So let's go through 3, which are the primary options of how you handle the property. So first is a sale option. So in that situation, you would be looking at what your property's value is. And when I say value, you need to look at it not just how the valuation is currently, but you'll need to really stay in touch with that throughout the entire process of your divorce, because divorces take at least 6 months and can extend far longer. And in a shifting real estate market, which is what we have been in for the last several months, you'll want to have a real-time feel for what your property's value is and what the interest rates are doing as well. It just will change the demand for your property and the feasibility of replacing it with another property and things of that nature. For my clients, I offer a AI tool that allows them to track that throughout the course of their divorce, and I highly recommend that. Another thing you want to consider is what repairs are going to need to be made to the property. And that's important in a sales situation as well as a buyout situation. And I'll get into a buyout shortly. But what repairs need to be made in order to sell the property at the best price that you can, so that you can maximize your return on the equity that the property has? Are there solar liens or loans that you need to factor in? All of those things need to be looked at, and your real estate professional should be able to help you navigate all of that, especially if they're an RCSD, because they're more accustomed to dealing with these sorts of things. So the next thing that I would encourage you to look at is a buyout situation. Now, the buyout, again, may be complicated by the fact that now with a single income and a higher interest rate, it may end up costing a lot more to buy out your spouse. In this situation, I refer to the spouse that remains in the property as a house spouse. So if the house spouse has to cover the mortgage of what is currently owed on the property, as well as half of whatever the equity payout is at a higher interest rate, it may not make those payments as feasible. So you really need to, as I said, keep in touch with what's going on with the market in terms of interest rates and valuation throughout the course of your divorce, especially if it's dragging out a little bit. So the last option is something called nesting. It's a little unusual, but we see sometimes families with small children or special needs children where the children stay in the primary residence and the spouses find a nearby rental property and they rotate through the other rental property or sometimes purchase, but that's less common, through a period of time of transition so that the children can have some level of continuity and it helps keep this situation a little less changing for them. So less common, tends to be with small children, but it is something to consider if that is feasible for your family. So number 4, curb appeal. Now, this is very important. And of course, it's difficult when a family is trying to figure out who's taking what and dividing up furniture and things of that nature. So I always encourage people to speak to your realtor early. Don't call your realtor once all of the living room furniture is gone and you're trying to figure out how to make the house look good again. Ultimately, if you speak to your realtor early on, you can figure out either partial staging or it may make sense to do a complete staging if you're both going in different directions and plan to vacate the property completely. But I always encourage people, involve your resources early because then you can make the best choices for the best outcome for your situation. In photography, it is critical to have a sense of scale for the space. So although some people do leave a property completely empty and take pictures of it and put it on MLS, statistically, properties that are not staged sell for 10 to 15% less than properties that are staged and give a sense of scale to the space. It just is better for the marketing and curb appeal of your property in general. If you have questions, you can ask me. And then number 5 is the paperwork. I encourage you strongly to make sure that whatever your divorce decree and your decided outcome is with the property, especially if one of the spouses is keeping the property, make sure that everything is reflected as it should be. The title company will advise you on what it needs to say from a title perspective. Your attorney will work through all of that as well. But sometimes things like homeowners insurance, flood insurance, different things of that nature don't get updated. And there are situations where people they've bought out their spouse has moved on, and then there's a flood in the kitchen, and the insurance company cuts the check to both parties. And if your divorce was not amicable and it was a fight to the finish, you may have additional challenges getting your ex to sign off and allow you to move forward in getting that wrapped up. So I always encourage people, make sure all of your paperwork reflects the agreement. And then one last thing is, while you're assessing what is owed on the property, and this is just something we're going to see more of in the coming years, if there is a HELOC, a home equity line of credit that has ever been on the property, make sure through pulling a credit report or something of that nature that there is no balance on that HELOC, because there are unfortunately situations where one spouse thinks that that's been completely paid off and the other spouse has tapped into that unbeknownst to the other person, and there's a balance or something to deal with related to that. So I always encourage people, make sure that you know what is owed on your property. So thank you so much for listening to this video. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm Heather McCarthy, your concierge agent, and I am happy to help you with any questions or concerns that you may have. My number is 916-267-4399. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know how I can help.